Hello guys, welcome back. In this video, let's explore the joint tool options in Maya software. So in rigging section, if you go to the skeleton, you have create joints option. Joints are used for skinning and character setup. So we have this tool settings which can be brought once you open the create joints option here. You can choose this button here to open the tool settings anytime if you wanted it to open. So we have the joints here. So before exploring all that options, I would like to quickly talk about the joints. So when I click here, you got a joint here. When I click another point in the viewport, it creates a second joint, and then I click it here, it gives a third joint, and I can keep going like that. So before going into that, I would like to talk about a certain thing, and I'll be taking the grease pencil help. So here what you're seeing is called a joint, okay, and then this is the circular part, the joint is called, whereas this one what you're seeing is called bone, okay. The total collection of these joints and bones is called a skeleton, okay. So skeleton is in hierarchy basically. So if I open the outliner and if I expand this joint 1, you should able to see joint 1, joint 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are the above. That is joint 6 is the child of joint 5 and joint 5 is the child of joint 4 and so on. So if I select the joint number 1 and move, the rest of the hierarchy will follow. If I select this joint here, which is joint 3, and move it, the above joints are not moving. The joints which are below are basically moving there. When we are rigging or working with joints, we majorly rely on the rotation of the joint for posing a character. We avoid using the movement and the scale. However, sometimes to get the stretchy rig and the other type of effects, we may rely on the joints translation and scale values, but most of the default rigs have only orientation like your human body has. So we have one important thing to understand when we are dealing with the joints. So let me select the joint number 1 and have a look on the translation values. The translation values are basically world space, which means if I select these values and change the values to 0, the first joint will go to the origin, okay. So it's like let's say if I am moving this to grid snap, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units. Sorry, I should count here from this point. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units in x-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units in the y-axis, and I could able to see that numbers there. Now, what about the next joint? If I make this value 0, will it go to the origin? I say no. The child object is 6.4 units, or I can make it 6.5 units. So this is 6.5 units away from the parent. You should be able to see when I'm switching the move tool manipulator from world axis to the object axis. I'm accessing that by pressing W and left mouse button, and then I'm getting a marking menu. I'm switching between the world and the object space. So when I'm choosing the object space, you should be able to see this joint's x-axis is facing towards the child. So don't worry about in which axis it's facing, but you need to identify this is the x-axis of the joint and that's the y-axis of the joint. So the child is 6.5 units to the parent in its x-axis. So if I start changing the value, the joint starts moving towards the parent in that axis only, and it works for every joint we have here, okay. It goes to its parent. So why is it only x-axis and why not any other axis? You know why? If I go to the skeleton and then if we just choose here the primary axis and the secondary axis, I'll just change this to y as the primary axis and z as the secondary axis. So when I start creating that, okay, and then if you should able to see the y is the primary axis, which is nothing but it's facing towards its child joint, and there's the up axis which is the z axis, which I have told just now. And you should able to see now this joint has got y value which I make it a 0, then it's going towards the parent object. So that's really important about the joints you need to know about. And let me go to the joints and then start exploring the other options here. So I'm in the orthographic view, and I'm going to just create a joint chain just like a limb. So if I select this joint, okay, this should be the parent, okay. Now if I select this joint and rotate, it is rotating in the y-axis. It's rotating in the this is z-axis, this is rotating in the y, and this is also rotating in the x-axis. So all 3 axes are working here. Let me open the attribute editor, and you have degrees of freedom. And if I switch off x and y, and now you should be able to rotate the joint in at the z, but it doesn't rotate in Y or X, and the other axes are not working because the free axis is only Z. Degrees of freedom is in X only. If I switch the Y also starts working here. So it will be a greater help when we are generally working with some joints, like your finger joint will only rotate in Z. It doesn't rotate in the sides, right? So you can generally choose this feature off here once you have created. Okay, so you can't rotate the other axis apart from the selected axis of freedom. Okay, so that's degrees of freedom here. So it only affects that particular channel. It doesn't work for this X and Z because I've made that thing. Okay, we have symmetry. If I just choose symmetry, okay, I'll go to the front view and then I start creating joints, and you should be able to see I'm getting the joints on both sides because the symmetry option is on. Okay, if I don't have this option, okay, if I don't have this option, then what we basically do is, okay, let me just create a joint at the origin. That's important for now, and then I'm going to parent it, so this becomes hierarchy. Now I can select this joint and I can go to the mirror joint options and then just choose YZ, and then I can mirror it. Okay, so this tool was is there if you are not able to create the mirror at initial time, but when you're creating it, if you want the mirror to work, then you should able to switch on the mirror option. However, you can press sometimes the keyboard shortcut of X, Y, Z works. Okay, you should be able to see X, Y, and Z is working when this feature is on. Okay, so you can change the Z axis by pressing Z on the keyboard once the symmetry is on there. Okay, we have scale compensate. This is something really nice. I would like to create a joint chain, and I'll just hit enter. Now I'm going to create a joint chain by scale compensate off. Okay, now let me scale this and this joints two at a time, and then you should be able to see the result is quite different. You know what happened here? This is correct way actually. When I'm going to scale this, this option should be on. You know why? When I'm scaling the hip, it should only scale the hip. It should not touch the other child joints. Okay, they should not deform abruptly or unwantedly. You don't wanted that joints to be scaled. Okay, that's what the riggers expect. But here, when I'm scaling the hip, it's scaling the child joints. So again, this can be a requirement in some times, or it can be otherwise. So you can choose anyone between them. But default is scale compensate is on. And we have auto joints option here. So what that actually does is, so when I'm just creating this joint chain, okay, and when I'm just slightly bending it for the knee, okay, and I'll just go to the create joint options, and then I'll switch on auto joints. Just click and then click there. Okay, so auto joints is off, right? So I made it on for this. Okay, now you should be able to see here, I'm going to rotate these two joints and they're nicely rotating, but let me rotate on the sides. Only the joint whose auto joint is off. If you're making on, the degrees of freedom are basically switched off automatically based on in which angle the knee is bending. So it is just to make your life a bit easier. So it doesn't rotate the other axes except the angle in which you have bent it. Okay, so let's say if I come to a different view, and then if I just create this joint, okay, and then like that, now this axis is going to work and the other axis is going to lock them. So in this case it is Z, in this case also it is Z, but it's again the local axis, right? So in any view you draw it shows up the same angle, but you see it's not working in any of these joints there. We have IK handle creation. So it's very simple. When I create a joint chain, you have created a joint chain, but if you have created a joint chain with create IK handle, you have created a joint chain, but you have created an IK handle with that. Okay, so IK handle is basically used to pose the limbs, and it's a very good way to do the limb rigging. Okay, so we have variable bone radius settings. When I'm switching this option off, this options here is not working. Okay, so you can actually control the bone radius and all here. So you have certain features. I'm going to talk about that. Short bone length and long bone length. So when I'm telling what is a short bone, any bone whose length is 1 unit. Okay, long bone, any bone which is whose length is 30 units. Okay, so let's say if I'm creating this, and I'm just creating a long bone whose length is as big as this. I'll just go back and then put it to 5. I'm going to grid snap it, and you should be able to see when I've created a joint after this, the joint radius is differing here. The small joint is having a different radius. Let me see what is that. It is 0.5, and here it is taking 2. Now that is because we have said that any bone whose length is 1 unit, then it should be taking a 0.5 radius. Any bone which is bigger than 5 is having 2 radius. Now what happens if I generally choose anything between 1 and 5? And you know what happens? It interpolates that. So it takes a value which is suitable between that. Okay. So if a joint chain is, if a joint is less than 1 unit, which is here, takes a radius of 0.5. Okay. And some people prefer to use it otherwise. So what is that? So they go for a radius of 0.5, no matter how much big the joint a bone length is. So you create as big as possible, but the radius of these bones are same. If you keep it differing, let's say, so it based on the length of the bone, the radius of the bone is decided. So that's again a user choice, how he wants the joints to be. It's just a experience for you how this skeleton should look like. Then we have projected centering. Now this is something really cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a cylinder. Okay, and I'm going to put a subdivision axis of 8 and height subdivisions to 4, and I'm going to scale this. Okay, and I'm going to rotate this like that. Okay, now you have this model. I'm going to apply mesh smooth, but before going into that, I just do this thing. So I'll be choosing the modeling and then apply mesh smooth. Okay, now placing joints in this particular model is not easy job. Okay, let's say if I slightly rotate it like that, then definitely this is not going to be an easy job to place joints in it. Let me show you that. So I go to the rigging, and then I'll just create joints and then start placing the joints there. So I'll switch on X-ray joints button and then just start placing the joints quickly. And then when I just come to the perspective view, you should be able to see the joints are not really in the center. Now what you need to do is you need to select this model and then enable this snap to projected center on. Then go to the create joints option. Okay, as projected centering is on here. Now when I start placing joints, okay, and then if I come here, and you should be able to see the joints are perfectly sitting in this setup. Let me try different way. Let me select this and then create a joint, but this time I'm not going to use the projected centering, and then start placing the joints again. Then you should be able to see it's not fitting in the center. So you should enable this feature here to work, and also you need to enable this feature to work here. Okay, so we have that, and I've told you this feature here, which is the orientation of the joints. When I'm choosing the create IK handle, the IK handle related settings are coming: single chain solver or rotate plane solver, or earlier it is called RP solver and SE solver. So you want to use any of the solvers. I'll be talking about these features in IK handle settings separately, but you can basically choose between these two. Now what is this joint orientation? I'll be coming to the side view and then choose the primary axis. Just click, 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 click. Okay, and I'll be selecting this hierarchy. Select a hierarchy and then go to display, transform display, and then local rotation axis. I'll switching it on. I'll go to the create joints again. This time I'm going to choose the Y as the primary and the Z as the secondary axis. So I'm going to create a very similar way like that. Select hierarchy and then go to display, transform display, local rotation axis. Then create joints. This time the primary is Z and secondary is X. Every time I'm doing the secondary axis world orientation is towards up. Okay, if I can change it to negative, so that will go downwards. Okay, so let me choose that again, and then go to select hierarchy, and then display, transform display, local rotation axis. You should be able to see here the primary axis is X axis and the secondary is the Y axis here. Okay, so what is the primary axis going to do? Primary axis is going to twist, and the secondary axis is going to, open up the joint. Okay, just like knee. And very similarly here we got the primary as Y and secondary as a Z. In these both cases the secondary is facing upside, right? But here the secondary axis in the third setup, I have chosen the secondary as X, but X is facing towards the Y negative side. You could see that is facing down there. So that is what that feature is about. So if I select let's say all these joints and then rotate X axis, in one joint chain the X is going to sway side, in one joint X is going to roll, and another one X is going to twist. So here X is twisting, here X is rolling, and here X is swaying on other side. So in which axis the joint has to be oriented is what orientation tool is about. However, you can select this joint chain, you can use the orient joint tool and change that for the other joints. Let's say the other joints also should be primary X and secondary Y, then you can set that and then apply for all of them, and all behave same way. Okay, like that, they all behave same way. So orientation of joints is how a joint should rotate. Now here if you should able to see, I'm rotating this joint in Z axis. Here also I'm getting the Z axis rotation, but if I generally change the orientation of this, now when I'm rotating, it's not Z but it is rotating in X axis. So that's the problem. So you get the rotation same way, but you need to, X or Y or Z, you need to pick between them. That's what this orientation tool. And knowing joints is very important, and I'll be sharing another video of joints where how I create joints in the viewport and what all rules I generally follow about joints. I'll be talking about that.